Hey lovelies, thanks for stopping by my channel today. I am excited to share this little Duping the Vibes with you. This, of course, is all about the new Clionadh palette, the Deep Sea Treasures. I'm here to share with you the palette that I created out of my own collection. Now, you've probably seen, because I'm sure that I put it either in the thumbnail or the title, I won't be picking this palette up for numerous reasons that I'll be sharing with you throughout this video. So I just wanted to be upfront about that at the beginning of this video, but I thought that hopefully it would still be entertaining or helpful to you to know my process and my thoughts as I went through and duped out this palette. So I think that I got pretty close. I don't think it's exact, which I think, is kind of hard to do anyway, but I did experience quite the journey, a different journey than I had anticipated. But I'm hoping that you find my thoughts valuable in this. Now, I think we were all excited to see that Clionadh was coming out with another palette. I know I've been waiting for one. And in the reveal, I realized that it probably wouldn't be something that I was going to pick up. But we all know that brands are good at making everything very alluring, very sexy, very like, ooh, maybe I should buy this. And I thought that it would be great to, take the time to go through my collection, see if I could dupe this palette out, and, really just see if it had a place in my collection. So I'm going to be sharing with you my thoughts. Of course, I'll be sharing with you the palette today. I think I've put it in the thumbnail or the title of this video. I'm not going to be picking this one up, and I will give you the reasons why during this video, of course. But if we haven't met before, my name is Kelly, and I'm a professional hair and makeup artist, and here on my channel, I strive to keep beauty real. Real honest, real relatable, and real fun. So if that sounds like something you'd enjoy, don't forget to click subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. So like I said, today I'm going to be swatching all these shades for you, giving you my experience through my little journey, going through my collection. I'm not going to be doing a look or anything. I mean, I know I'm not wearing much makeup today. I will be honest, if my energy seems off in this video, it's been a pretty difficult day for me. My eyes were pretty swollen earlier today, and I was like, I can't do the makeup thing. So little concealer, a little mascara, we're good to go. I figured, getting to swatch all the pretty things, all the sparklies would make me feel better, and I really did want to give you my thoughts on this collection. So bear with me here as we go through, but I am excited to be spending today with you, and I appreciate you for hanging out with me. So before we dive into the reveal of my palette, I did want to go over the details on this palette. I'm sure you've all heard them, so we're going to keep this brief. But the palette is being launched on the 16th, which as I film this is tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Now the retail price of this palette is $124.99 in Canadian dollars. So if you are here in the United States like I am, it will be around $93.50 depending on the exchange rate, of course. So this is, by the way, a palette that is coupon eligible. So if you did want to use a coupon code, you can get a slight discount on this. Now the brand describes this as a palette containing 8 shades with hues of the deep sea and bright accents in varying multi-chromatic finishes. The perfect blend of color and neutrals, this palette will suit anyone's taste. So here you can see the palette. And like I said, I was a little bit disappointed. I don't know what I was expecting, and I do think it's also hard in a palette that contains 8 shades. You can only do so much, right? Now, I do have to say, one of the main reasons why I'm not going to be picking this up, and for those of you that are not new to my channel, you will know that because this palette leans into those blurples, those bluey purples, that's just not something that I wear a lot of. And this isn't exactly an inexpensive palette, not that any of us expected it to be, probably, but it just won't be shades that I reach for a lot. That also means in the duping of this, I was fairly limited in my shadow collection of trying to find those perfect matches, which is why I said I didn't find anything that was perfect, but again, it's about the vibes of it. So that was one of the reasons that I didn't want to pick this up. I will also say there's something about the packaging. The packaging itself seems nice, but it's the artwork of this palette that there's just something that's a little off for me. It doesn't look like the artwork that would be on a $94 palette, in my opinion. It's just a little bit homemade. And I feel so guilty even saying that because someone designed this and they put their heart and soul into it. It's very cute. It's just not what I would want out of a palette. So I'm just going to be saying that. Okay, so we're going to get into this. And by the way, I will be doing a little bit of a cost breakdown, a cost analysis, my thoughts on the pricing towards the end of this as I kind of go into some more of the reasons why I'm not getting this one. But we'll get there. So I'm going to show you my palette. Now, you're going to notice that there's an extra shade in this palette. That might be kind of cheating. I will get into that as we get to that area of this palette. But again, this was really about just trying to come up with the vibes of this palette in my collection. So that's where that is. And you know what? It's my palette. I'm able to do it. So these are my technically 9 shades that I have here. Hopefully you're able to see that. So just trying to give you a little up close look here. Of course, I'm going to be doing arm swatches up nice and close for you so that you can see. I do also want to say, by the way, if you hear ambient noise going on, it is just far too nice to have the windows closed. It's finally getting to be nice here in Wisconsin, and I was like, it's so beautiful outside. If I'm going to be inside doing some filming, I just kind of want to have the outside coming in, so please forgive that. So I'm going to share with you the shade descriptions from the brand and also the swatches that they have put up. I wanted to see if they had the creator. I don't know, maybe these are actually just from the brand. I do appreciate that they have this on a deep, what I would say is a light medium and a light skin tone. So hopefully there's someone that's like close-ish to your skin tone range, because of course that does make a very big difference as to how these shadows will look. So that being said, when choosing these shadows, I tried to go with the arm swatches that seemed as close to my skin tone as possible, because again, that does make a big difference. So as we go through here, this first shade is Saltwater Pearl. This is described as a bright silver with a sheer seafoam green base, aqua shifts, and hints of warmth. So silver is also another shade that I really don't have a lot of in my collection, which is so hilarious because I used to be such a silver girl. So this was one that was sort of hard for me to emulate. I do think, you know, that again, this is one that really makes a difference depending on the skin tone. So just right here, I want to show on the lightest skin tone, you can see that Saltwater Pearl, and then taking a look at the deepest skin tone, you can see how much more like icy, frosty, I mean, I'm gonna sort of say chalky. It's not chalky as in like dusty, but there's definitely that like ashier feel to it on the deepest of skin tones. So again, I was just trying to go off of the vibes on the lightest skin tone because I feel like my eyelids are going to be more on that skin tone. Oh, I'm actually going to zoom you in now that we're going to be talking all about the shades. Hi. Have I done YouTube videos before? Yes. Does it seem like it? Probably not. Okay, so this is the shade right here that I chose. This is Hanky Panky from Glam Shop. And I think that this definitely has some of that energy. I think that perhaps this shade is a bit lighter in texture. I think it's a bit more translucent. I will be honest, I think that I would prefer that rather than something that's like a really heavy, thick silver, because I think this could be used in more ways. So give you guys a little swatch. Again, I will definitely be doing up close swatches, but you can see here, it has a sheer base to it, or a more sheer base than the one in the Clionadh palette, but it does have some of that energy to it. You know, I think, although I have to say, I don't see, the brand says hints of warmth. They must be very subtle hints, because I don't really see it. I mean, I see a bit of taupiness in this, but I really see like a silvery lavender, a light aqua blue, that like seafoam. So that's all I'm seeing from it. But Hanky Panky is the one that I chose. I really like this shade from Glam Shop because it is, I mean, it just, you could use it as a topper shade. You could use it as an inner corner. Heck, if you're into that vibe, you could use it as a highlight on the cheekbone. There's just something about this one that's really pretty. I feel like that shade in the Clionadh palette, especially when you look at, again, the dark arm swatch, it looks a bit thicker. Again, it could be that, you know, it's been done with several passes over the skin. I just feel like those shades that get more of that thicker metallic vibe, and I've talked about this before, like when it's not hitting the light, it actually looks quite a bit darker because it's so metallic. So I like something like this that's going to maintain quite a bit more of that like bright feel to it. That's just me. Okay, moving on, we have the second shade in the top row, and that one is the Benz. And that is described as a rich teal base with large glitter particles shifting lilac, beige, yellow with hints of lime. I see the most shifts on the deeper skin tone. You know, up at the top of the arm, you can see a little bit of like that seafoam, and it's more into like a lilac or lilac, however you choose to say it. But honestly, I mean, in the other two swatches, it looks very much like that tealy green base with that shift of purpley lavender over the top. Okay, Being real with you, I legit just stopped mid swatch party because I started like doubting my choice, because I have two shades that I think both kind of like emulate some of the vibes. And you know what? I'm going to share them both with you because why not? So the first one that I chose is a Divina Shadow. Actually, they're both Divina Shadows. But this one I chose because I personally see more of the... I didn't have anything that's like quite a dead ringer, because that blue/teal base is actually a bit deeper than what I have in my collection. Most of the like shifty blue shades that I have, or teal shades, are a bit like lighter. I still, to me, this is barely teal. It is more into that blue, but that's just me. That's my personal thought. So this shade that I first chose was ATHR, and again, this is a Divina Shadow. So you can see that this has that lilac/lavender flip, and this one is more of a blue base. So I'm gonna actually swatch both of these out for you. Again, we're kind of cheating here, but it's my palette. So this, I mean, you can see here, this definitely has that base that I see more of as like that blue, and it does have a bit of that lavender shift. I think some of this, I'm definitely going to have to wait until I'm doing the up-close swatches for you to really be able to appreciate. So the other shadow that I was thinking of is a recent launch from Divina, and this is Half Sea Fog. And I think a lot of people were just like losing their minds over the shade. So if you weren't able to get it, maybe you would enjoy it in this palette, although I don't know if it's going to be, you know, worth $94. But you can see here, even just pan to pan, this definitely has more of that teal underbase, and then you get the blue and the purple in the flip. So the one thing about Divina Shadows is some of the ones that I was trying to swatch and like I thought would be good comparisons, they're actually a lot more sparkly than the ones in this Clionadh palette. And so there were times that I was like, okay, that kind of nails the color, but it's way more sparkly, like way more glittery than what the ones from Clionadh are. So I'm gonna swatch these right next to each other here. All right, so getting just a little bit closer here, you can see the teal green base of this versus the bluer base of ATHR. So it just depends on how you interpret the shade. I personally think it's closer to the blue one, but I like the teal underbase as well. All right, so that is those shades. I feel like sometimes brands get really extra descriptive in talking about the shifts that are in a color, but you know, I guess it just depends on what your eye sees. I did not see lilac beige yellow with hints of lime. I see lilac. I even see like a little bit of like that lighter blue, like almost like a coneflower blue, or is it cornflower blue? Somebody let me know down below. I see that, but I don't see beige or yellow. And I don't really see lime either. If you do, that's cool. Now our next shade is called Fool's Gold, a warm brown base with yellow, lime, aqua shifts, and hints of purple. And I feel like every shade in here is said to be the entire rainbow. So the one that I've chosen from my collection is a new one, again from Divina, and this is Frothy Surf. And honestly, I don't necessarily think that it is that surprising to see new collection battling it out with new collection, in all honesty, because I think, you know, I mean, there's only so much you can do with pigments that are allowed to be put on the eye area. I think that there's only so much you can do, and so a lot of the new things will be somewhat similar. Again, you can only reinvent the wheel so many ways. So again, this is Frothy Surf. I really like this one. And I do think that this actually has quite a bit of difference in the color. Again, this is described as a warm brown base with yellow, lime, aqua shifts and hints of purple. I mean, I definitely get, it's more of an orangey, rusty base. It's not brown base, but I do get the yellow, the lime, a little bit of aqua. I don't see any purple, but honestly, I don't see it in the other one either. Do I? I mean, maybe. I do see just a slight little bit up at the top end on the lightest skin tone. So, okay, again, although, like, I feel like there's almost a different hue of light coming from the top of these swatches. That could totally be not true. But this was what was in my collection that was, you know, more close. So this to me, I think, is about as close as possible. Okay, as close as possible in my collection. So the next shade that Clionadh has in this is Kelp Forest. So they describe this as a deep, cool brown base with green, turquoise, blue, indigo shifts. This one, when I first saw it, I was like, hashtag not unique. Like, I was like, I have this so many times over in my collection, I bet. I was surprised. I honestly could not find anything in my collection that duped this. Again, though, I have to say, like, I feel like in this photo, there is a cooler light being shown upon the top of this arm, because even the skin of the arm looks cooler toned at the top. It looks like there's like a slight violet tone. And then at the bottom, it's just warmer, but the skin also looks warmer. But at any rate, I didn't get quite the same vibe, because the shades that I have I always call it like a bit of a maroon, because it's like a red-brown base. They just didn't quite nail the blue to the green. So I pulled out what was closest in my collection. This one, again, I was just like, I'm sure I have this. And maybe I do, maybe I couldn't find part of my collection. If you have a dupe for this one, please let me know, because I was like, this is such a cute shade. So when I was picking out the shade that I was going to include in this BYOP, I was like, all right, do I go for that brown base? Do I go for the shift? Do I go for like the brightness, the feel of the shadow? And I tried to find a good happy medium. This is the shade Flora from Glam Shop. And this is one like in the pan, I was like, this is not going to be close. But I do feel like once it gets on the skin, it is somewhat similar. You can see a bit of that like bluey indigo shade there, and then it gets to be more of the bright purple. I don't think that this one has quite as much of that brown base. In fact, it doesn't have a brown base at all, but it does have a little bit of that feel. Now, I have to say, I really like the shade. I really like Kelp Forest. Like, I think it's a bit grungier than this shade is, but I also know myself in that I would probably get more use out of this one. I mean, again, here, I feel like you can see some of that indigo to blue shift, and you can see the brighter green. It just doesn't have that brown base. I'm gonna see if turning this down even a little bit more helps us here. I will, again, of course, give you up close swatches, but I love the vibrancy and the brightness that Flora has. Like, it just has a little bit more of like a pop, and I do think that I could make it more grungy by putting that like brown base underneath. So I think that this one has a little bit more opportunity to it. I would be able to use it in more ways. So moving into the second row, we have the shade Ring of Fire, a large particle glitter shadow with red hot sparkles that shift red, orange, peach, yellow. Now the shade that I chose for this is Nakarat from Divina Cosmetics again. You will see that I have a lot of Divina in this in this palette. I have a lot of Divina shadows. I would say that Divina and Terra Moons are probably my top multi-chrome shadows that I have. I really don't have a lot of Clionadh. I think I have like 8 to 10 Clionadh shades, and honestly I just don't reach for them as much. So this shade, I believe, is part of the multi-chrome madness bundle, which I just absolutely love. This is a newer shade to me. So this one, I really think it gets a lot of the vibes. Now, I know before I was saying that a lot of the Divina shades that I have are actually more sparkly than the Clionadh ones in this palette, and I think that this is actually the opposite. I feel like this doesn't have quite as much sparkle as what the one in the Clionadh palette has. But I do see a lot of similarities. I would say that maybe there is a bit more of pink to the shift of this, just at that certain angle, but it's like a pinky red. And then you do get a lot of the peach. You get some of that like vibrant gold. I had a couple colors that were sort of close here. I just think that this one has that like red orange peachy thing going on to it that I couldn't quite get out of other ones. Okay, our next shade is Cephalopod, a large particle glitter shadow with a pinky mauve base and bright green aqua pink shifts. Can I just tell you, looking, this is another one that was sort of hard for me to be able to get out of my collection. And it was funny because the one shade that I have in my collection that I think is the most similar to this is actually a cream shadow, and it's Master Plan from Sydney Grace, which I just went on about in my favorites video from last month. It's out of stock right now. I'm not sure when it's going to be back because the brand, you know, they said that it's the pigments that they use in that is a little bit harder to come by. So I was like digging through my collection and I'm like, I swear, probably tomorrow I'm going to find it in my collection and I'm just going to kick myself. But this was the closest I could get. I don't think it's the same because the base isn't quite as, there isn't as much color to the base of this. It's not quite as mauve-y, but this is somewhat close. So this is Celestial Petal. I think this is a fairly well-known one from Terra Moons. I do think it gives the feel of this, and it does have that, you know, they say bright green, aqua, and pink. I do think you get the aqua from this. There's just something about this. It might not have the bright green. I swear, again, I swear I have a shadow in my collection that I do have that from. So there is the shadow that I picked. Again, it's not a dupe by any means, but it does give a little bit of the vibe. And I feel like if you were to sheer this out a little bit more, you get a little bit more of that. This one has a bit more of a blue shift to it as opposed to a tealy green. I'm telling you, Master Plan is pretty darn close. So I was just like kicking myself. But that also means that if I wanted to use that shadow, I could use Master Plan, right? So now this next one. And I think that I knew that this was going to be one that I didn't have in my collection. And this, of course, is the shade Shipwreck. And I think a lot of people are excited about this one. Clionadh describes this as a smooth black, red, orange shadow with hints of gold and indigo micro shimmer. So it's not often that I buy really deep shades in single pans. You know, I have shadow palettes that have those deeper shades. I do have a few deep shades in my collection, but for some reason, I just tend to go for the light, sparkly, shifty shades. For some reason, when I am single shadow shopping, it's just not something that I reach out for. I think this shade is very pretty. I do think, though, that I can get the vibes of this from mixing two shades, and that's exactly what I have here. Now, you're probably not going to be surprised, but I did pick out for the base of this shade that I'm creating, this little shadow cocktail, if you will, is Midnight Sun from Divina Cosmetics. Now, I would say that this has more of a red. You don't get a lot of orange from this one. I think Terra Moons has a shade that maybe does have a bit more orange to it. I thought that I had a shade in my collection that was another like black shifty from Terra Moons or another brand. I can't find it. I don't know where it is, but this is the one that I thought would be the base. And for the top, just to get some of that extra shimmer, I chose out one of the Velvet shadows from Glam Shop, and this is Cherry. So the Velvet shadows from Glam Shop are more of a colored base with a different colored sparkle over the top. So what I'll do, actually, I think what might be kind of nice to do is I'm going to swatch these separate from each other, and I will swatch them layered over each other as well, just so that you can kind of see. So, I mean, I think everybody has kind of seen these types of shadows. It is very similar. Like, it's just, you don't get quite the sparkle. Like, this has the vibe, but you don't get the sparkle of it. So that's where Cherry kind of comes in. Also, I'm not doing like digging into the pan swatches. That's another whole video. I want to talk about sometimes is swatching and the reality of swatching. So I'm really just taking one swipe into the pan and one swipe. So you can see here, this is a lot lighter and it doesn't have the shift, but it definitely has the sparkle. So if I take Cherry and I just layer this lightly over the top, can you see how that just made that more sparkly and shifty? And I feel like it's close. It's definitely close enough for me to feel like I don't need to buy a $94 palette to get one shade that I don't have in my collection. You can almost see it here on my finger there. I mean, I feel like that's pretty close, y'all. It's pretty close. Okay, and the last shade is Scuba, a slate gray base with medium glitter particles subtly shifting indigo violet peach with hints of yellow. A slate gray base. I guess I see that. But I just think of it, if it's got a slate gray base, it has a heck of a lot of the medium glitter, because this to me just looks like a pretty, I guess I would say dimensional purple. I don't really see a lot of shift and, You know, like this, I would say at most is like a duochrome. If you disagree with me, please let me know, but I would certainly not consider this a multi-chrome. I would consider this a duochrome. I almost consider it more, like I said, more like the Velvet formula from Glam Shop, where it's one colored base and another color sparkle over the top. So what did I choose out? I chose a Velvet from Glam Shop, and that is the shade, at least I think this is a Velvet. It's Acrylic Ice. If it's not, it should be one of the Velvets, because you can see here, this has a little bit of a grungy, I would say this is actually like an indigo base with the lighter pinky purple sparkles over the top. So what did Clionadh say? That Scuba has a slate gray base and the particles shift indigo, violet, peach with hints of yellow. I'm just going to put this here. At points in this video, by the way, I might have covered up my face. My face is not important. Comparing the shadows is. I just don't see it. Now this is brighter. It's definitely brighter than Scuba. I also think I like it a little bit better than Scuba. And also, I think, again, I could put a gray base down and pop this over the top. And I do get some of the vibe of that shadow. But, I mean, here you can see it is deeper at the edges. It just gets so bright and vibrant and sparkly there. So I would think you could lay down a gray base and, like, just put this right over the top. And you'd get a very similar shade. And, again, I don't have a ton of purples in my collection because they're not something that I go towards. So that is it. That is my cheater palette. But I don't know, y'all. I feel like I did a pretty good job. We're going to zoom in right now and you can let me know. So I feel like here on this angle, you can see a bit more of the shift of these shades. It's hard to like get that area of my elbow to turn and like really give you an angle. I mean, again, it's the vibes. It's not exact, but it definitely tickled the need that I had for seeing if I could dupe out this palette. Okay, lovelies, so that is a dip into my Duping the Vibes palette. Like I said, it's not a complete like dead ringer dupe, but it did give me a feel for the vibes. Exactly. And that's really what I needed to do. And I feel like through this journey, I definitely found a couple shades that I thought were already in my collection that weren't. And a couple that, while I thought that they were really unique, it's something that I could get pretty close to. And I definitely still feel like it's not necessary for me to have this. Honestly, this was such a great experiment for me to do for myself. So regardless of whether I was going to have time to film this or not, I wanted to do this just so I could see, you know, like, do I have this? Are there shades in here that I think are really that unique? I don't have the most extensive collection of single shadows. I have a pretty good collection, but I don't have the most extensive. And I'm sure that there are going to be other creators who are maybe able to like dupe this more solidly, but this was for me in my collection and just, you know, kind of going through that journey. And I really would recommend to all of you, whether it's with this palette or another palette launch, you know, maybe take the time to go through your collection and really see what you have. I know we've all had times where like we get drawn into the excitement of a new launch. You know, maybe it's a brand that we know that we usually love the quality of, but then there just ends up being times that we get it, we swatch it, we're so excited, we use it once or twice, and then we just realize it's something that we kind of already have, maybe in a different combination or whatever. Again, like I said, I just knew that this one wasn't probably going to be for me. Looking at the pricing of it, so at regular price, by the way, this breaks down to about $11.69 a piece before tax, before shipping, and all of that. Clionadh's shadows have a wide range, right? You've got everything from $7, $10, $12, all the way up to, I believe their most expensive one is $18.88. So now that being said, you have a wide variety of costs in the stained glass collection shadows. So it really just depends on the true formulas of the shadows in that palette, you know, like if they're all considered more of like the multi-chrome, the jeweled multi-chrome. Now, I don't think that any of the shades in this palette are like the jeweled multi-chrome collection. That is more of that like dark base or like the dark gray base, I'm pretty sure. So those are in that $18.88 range. I don't really think that any of the shadows in this collection are in that jeweled multi-chrome or even in like the dimensional multi-chrome, because I do have one of the shades in the dimensional and I don't feel like they have quite that like feel and that like pigmentation. I feel like a couple of these shades look a little bit more of that like mid-tone opacity, if that makes any sense, where they're not like super opaque, but they're not like iridescent topper shades either. They're sort of in that mid-range. So, you know, let's say that we take these in sort of like that hybrid multi-chrome, right? Where you have like some of the sparkle, you have some of the shift. That's in the $13.59 range. So you're maybe saving like $2, maybe $3, but if it's more similar to some of the lesser expensive ones, the glitter multi-chromes, you know, those are $7.55 a piece. And so then you're kind of like losing out money. I also get that you have a palette component here, right? So, you know, there is more to this than that, but that just is sort of like breaking down the shade costs. And if you don't feel like you will use, I'm going to say 7 out of the 8 shades in here, I wouldn't recommend getting the palette. I just think you're really losing out on money. I do appreciate it looks like this palette has the opportunity to pop out shades, so you could pop in your own shades, right? But you also could buy a little palette and put your own shades in. You know, it just really depends on what you think. So again, at the end of the day, I don't think this is one I need. I don't even think it's one that I would pick up on, let's say, like a 20% off sale, anything like that. Like I think, is it 15% or 20% off that Clionadh usually does around Black Friday? This isn't something that I would like run out to grab. Would I maybe get 1 or 2 of the shades if they ever were selling them singly, which I don't think that they are right now. By the way, I do also want to mention they had a couple cute nail polishes, some multi-chromatic nail polishes. There are 3 of them. I didn't even look because I don't need any nail polish right now, but that is also an option for those of you that love nail polish to check into that. But I'm glad that I took the time to do this. It was fun to go through my collection, realize that I didn't have some of the shades that I thought I did, but also that I was able to sort of like layer and get more of that vibe. And it also maybe will make me layer more in the future. Honestly, when it comes to multi-chromes, I don't really usually do a lot of layering. I'm usually like boop, 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 and I want that one to shine. But maybe I will do that more because it was pretty fun to kind of see the result. All right, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I know that I enjoyed getting to make it and, you know, go through all of my makeup. Like I said, let me know if you want to see more of these Duping the Vibe videos. Obviously, we have the Adept palette coming out soon as well. If you do want me to do a Duping the Vibes of that one, I would consider doing that if I have the time before the palette launches. You know, as I'd mentioned during the swatch party of this video, I think that it's getting harder and harder to do new in the indie space, you know, because I mean, there are so many pigments, there are only so many ways you can combine them, you know, there are only so many formulas that you can get out there. So I feel like you have to look at color story, you're looking at the packaging if that's important to you, both the quality and the aesthetic of it, and, you know, the formulas. I mean, I feel like that's really it, right? And so it has to be a combination of those things, and it has to be valued for you, and that's going to be different for everybody. For me, it's sort of like when I go out to a restaurant, there's ambiance, there's service, and then there's the food itself. And I'm like, I really need 2 out of the 3 of those. I really need 2 out of the 3. You know, so otherwise there's really no point in going to that restaurant, because sometimes if I can get good service and there's great ambiance, I'm okay with like, you know, I go and like maybe I'm just gonna have an appetizer or whatever, or like there's 1 or 2 items on the menu that I know that I enjoy and the rest I just stay away from. Or there's a place that has really good food. The ambience is less than ideal, but the service is great, so I know like just going there, it's not going to be super fancy, and I'm just going there for like the experience of the eating, right? So I feel like that's the same way in eyeshadow palettes. Wow, okay, can you tell I'm hungry? I haven't really eaten a lot today. So I feel like before this video keeps going downhill, I should sign off. But if you are new to this channel, if maybe you just stopped over to get some inspiration as to whether you need the palette, if you did enjoy this, I hope you'll consider subscribing. Again, let me know if you want to see more Duping the Vibes videos in the future. But that's it for today, and I will see you really soon.